All right, everyone, we're going to get started. So welcome everyone to the California ACC Fit Networking and Career Development event. I'm Megan Pelter.
And I'm Pani Vafai.
And we are the Southern and Northern California ACC Fit chairs. We are thrilled that you could join us today for what will be an exciting and informative session.
So before we begin, we'd like to take a few seconds to thank our wonderful esteemed panelists who took time out of their busy schedules to join us tonight. We'd also like to thank the California ACC Board and Executive Committee, especially its President, Dr. Jamal Rana, Vice President, Dr. Anthony Hilliard, and CEO, Leanna Collins, for their unwavering support and enthusiasm. This program would certainly not be possible without their tremendous leadership and guidance. We'd also like to thank our FIT committee for their dedication and hard work in recruiting all of our wonderful panelists and organizing this event that will hopefully serve as a valuable resource for fellows and other trainees considering cardiology.
For today, the format of the session will be as follows. We will first start by having our panelists introduce themselves. We will then discuss several pre-selected questions before opening it up to the audience for further questions and answers. If you have any questions, please submit them in the chat box. Pani and I will then present them to the panelists. Please remember to remain muted during the event. If you have a question you would like to verbally ask, then please raise your hand and we will unmute you.
This session will be recorded and available on the California ACC website for further viewing. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So first off, we will have our panelists give us a 3 to 5 minute introduction, each outlining their background, training, career, and journey within the field of cardiology. So I will start with no other than Dr. Andrew Ambrosi. So Drew, take it away.
Thanks so much, Pani, and thank you both, Megan and Pani, for inviting me to be part of this. I'll try not to make my introduction 3 to 5 minutes. So I'm an early career cardiologist. I've been out of fellowship for about 3 years. I've really been all over. I started for medical school at Northwestern. I did my residency at Stanford, so I was out here on the West Coast. Then I went back to the East Coast for fellowship and did clinical and research training at the Duke Clinical Research Institute, where I focused on heart failure and clinical trials in particular. When I finished fellowship, I was sort of looking very broadly for jobs, both geographically across the United States, as well as different opportunities, very traditional private practice, very traditional academic jobs, and a lot of hybrid positions in between. And that's actually what I landed at. So I've been with Kaiser Permanente for about 3 years now. And, my career trajectory is probably a little bit non-traditional compared to most. I work at, at a private healthcare organization where most people are 100% clinical, but I actually predominantly do research. So at the present time, I do 25% clinical. So I work as a non-invasive cardiologist and, really do the full spectrum of cardiovascular care. So clinic, running in the ICU, running in the consult service, EKG, Holter, echo. But I also spend 75% research. So for that, I'm based at our regional office in Oakland, and I have a very traditional research career with a broad portfolio. So I have NIH funding, internal funding, some investigator-initiated, industry-sponsored cohort studies and clinical trials, and it's really been a great experience. In addition to that, I have a couple of leadership roles with the organization. So I'm the associate program director for our fellowship. So I get an opportunity to work with our fellows and mentor them on their scholarly activities and professional development. And I'm also the assistant medical director for clinical trials for the whole region. So I support site-based research and clinical trials across all therapeutic areas and all 260 medical centers and 260 clinics and 21 medical centers. So it's been great. So I love it. For me, it's the perfect mix, and it's good to be involved in patient care, education, and research.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. Next, we have Dr. Brenton Bauer. If you don't mind introducing yourself.
Hey, everybody. My name is Brenton Bauer. Thank you, Pani and Megan, for having me, and to everybody at California ACC and beyond. It's great to be here. So as compared to our prior panelist, Dr. Ambrosi, I have not been everywhere. I've pretty much been local in Southern California. And I grew up here and went to UC Riverside for undergraduate, went through accelerated UCR-UCLA program for medical school, stayed at UCLA for internal medicine residency, chief residency, and fellowship, with chief fellowship the final year. I kind of incorporated an advanced imaging portion of the fellowship into the third year, as well as cardio-oncology. And now I've been in practice for a little over 2 years in the Los Angeles South Bay, a private group called Core Healthcare Associates, which we service our main hospitals, Torrance Memorial Medical Center, as well as a couple other smaller hospitals in the area. My focus is really advanced cardiac imaging, as well as building cardio-oncology locally here in the South Bay. I love it. I'm predominantly all clinical, but also do a lot of leadership activities within the national ACC as well as California ACC, and have really enjoyed my opportunities there, trying to incorporate in some research into the private practice world. So again, thank you for having me, and look forward to the rest of the discussion.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Bauer. Next, we'll have Carolyn Enders. If you could give us your introduction.
Hi, everyone. Again, thanks so much for having me. I think this is such a wonderful group to be a part of. So I grew up in Kansas, actually. So from the Midwest originally. So I went to University of Kansas for medical school. I then went out to Scripps Clinic for my internal medicine training, did a chief year there. So hi, Dr. Suhar and Dr. Patel, who were definitely mentors to me along the way. It was really at Scripps where I discovered that cardiology was something I fell in love with. I didn't anticipate that at all. So then I went up to CPMC in San Francisco for a cardiology fellowship, was a chief fellow there as well. I am like Drew, I'm also a part of Kaiser Permanente. So I'm in the East Bay. So I'm at Kaiser Oakland in Richmond. I am one of our assistant chiefs. So I've also been there for about 3 years. I stepped into the assistant chief role within this last year, kind of as I was coming back from maternity leave and COVID. So it's been quite the journey to be a part of, but I've really enjoyed it. I am very clinical, so I consider myself really to be a general cardiologist. So I do inpatient rounding. We have residents we work with at Kaiser Oakland. I do a lot of time in clinic. So for me, it's a really great mix, and something that I've really enjoyed, and get to see a lot of really interesting cases.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Next, we have Dr. Abha Kandenwa.
Hi, Pani and Megan. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of this panel. I share Carolyn's enthusiasm for being part of this. I am also from the Midwest. I did most of my undergraduate training at Case Western. I subsequently actually got my master's in information systems before deciding to pivot and go to medical school at the Ohio State University. And then subsequently did most of my residency, fellowship, and attending training in Chicago at Rush. I joined Stanford. I guess I still consider myself early, but I guess after 8 or 9 years of practice, I don't know where I fall, but I'm going to call myself early. And I was hired here to really grow the clinical enterprise. And I was one of the first kind of full-time CE general cardiologists that they had hired. I was also one of the few female faculty that was here, so that was fun getting to do that. Since that time, I've really kind of grown their women's heart health program, their cardio obstetrics program, which has been always my interest. In addition, I have served as the ambulatory clinic chief for all of CV medicine, so kind of doing some administrative and managerial roles there. I've been able to actually, as well, in my CE role, I can kind of define how I get my funding. I don't have to rely on the NIH per se. So I've done a lot of work with clinical trials, specifically in both cardio obstetrics as well as, cardiovascular prevention, such as lipoprotein(a) and South Asian cardiovascular health. So I do that. I've served, time in the echo lab, on the inpatient service, on the consult service, and I do a fair amount of clinic. So I really feel like I've gotten to enjoy the best of all 3 parts of cardiovascular medicine. And it's definitely been a long journey and full of fun little pivots and turns. So I'm happy to share any experiences with the fellows as we talk more. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Yeah, and so you're definitely still considered early. So next we'll have Dr. Purvi Parwani, all the way from India, joining us tonight. So
hi everyone. good morning or better, good evening in California. So my name is Purvi Parvani. I'm an advanced imaging multimodality imager and cardiologist at Loma Linda University Health in Loma Linda, California. I'm from India, so I'm probably the only foreign medical graduate amongst the attendings here, but I'm sure that I relate to many of you here because I do see a fair amount of foreign medical graduates. So I went to med school here and then came to United States around 13 years ago, did my MPH and then residency at University of Connecticut on the East Coast. So I'm really been everywhere. Then went to University of Oklahoma to do my fellowship and then the Advanced Imaging Fellowship at UCSF San Francisco. I actually was wanting to stay in California and had only applied to California for attending jobs. And with my visa, it was for amongst the foreign medical graduates, you probably know it's pretty challenging. So was lucky really to find this job. I started as a multimodality imager and I've been in practice for 4 years. It's an academic job. I do 4 days of imaging and 1 day of clinic. I rarely do CCU or consults and I'm mostly on call for echo. So it's a really good work-life balance that I have in my current job. I also am I don't have that much dedicated time for research, but I've been able to get some trials at Loma Linda, as well as being able to really collaborate very effectively with faculty outside, as well as at Loma Linda, and have been able to publish in last 4 years. So yeah, I think it's been a good ride, and I'm right now on vacation in India. So it's now 5:45 in the morning, but happy to be here with all of you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Parwani, for joining us from India. We really appreciate it. Next, we have Dr. Melher Patel.
Well, again, thank you guys for allowing me to participate in all this. Excuse me. I guess I'm mid-career at this point, a general cardiologist at Scripps Clinic. I did my undergrad at UCLA. I went to a medical college of Wisconsin for medical school. I came back to Southern California at Scripps Clinic for residency. I told myself I will not be a lifer at any location. I'm going to move for every step of the way. And I just got locked in, and the opportunities were there at Scripps Clinic for a fellowship. And then as a practicing cardiologist, I ended up flirting with lots of different subspecialties when I was going to go in. Many of my mentors were general cardiologists, and I found that I can do inpatient, outpatient, echo nuke. I do my pacemakers, transesophageal echoes, my own caths. I was able to do. So once they were able to allow me to do all that, I thought, sort of, why not take that, especially at a place that I could teach, which is one of the biggest things that sort of drew me to stay at Scripps. And after a few years, I was roped into being a program director of the Cardiology Fellowship. I've been doing that for about 4 or 5 years now. I spend about 1 day a week dedicated to that, and the other days a week outpatient clinics, and mixing it up between the imaging modalities as well as inpatient wards once every couple months or so. I love it. That's all I got.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And next we'll have Dr. Austin Robinson.
Hey guys, good to be here. Thanks for having me. Austin Robinson. I see a couple familiar faces here. I was at medical school at UCLA where I was a year behind Brenton. I don't know if he remembers me, but I remember talking to my mentor in third year. I said, how do I do it right? And he said, there's this guy, Brenton Bauer, just do what he did. And I left California, I thought for good, went to the East Coast residency at Yale, and then was interested in cardiovascular imaging. And so ended up doing a combined clinical fellowship and extra 2-year imaging fellowship, which was heavy biomedical engineering and radiology. And then I'm just a year out of fellowship now here at Scripps Clinic, where I split my time. I have 3 kind of clinical days a week, a day of imaging and a day of research. And it's been a lot of fun and interesting to see the different ways that cardiology is practiced on the East Coast versus here, and in academic, university settings versus hybrid settings like Scripps. And I feel like I've been learning a lot and really enjoying it. So thanks for having me.
Excellent. So next we have Dr. Christopher Suhar.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Megan and Connie for this opportunity. And I think it's great of the ACC to support something like this. These events, I think, are a way to really connect. And Carolyn, great to see you. I'm from Ohio. I did medical school at the Medical College of Ohio, and came out to California at that point to do a combined med-peds residency at Loma Linda University. Initially wanted to do pediatric cardiology, I found it hard emotionally with children that often, didn't make it, or not often, but they didn't make it. Some didn't make it. So that was hard on me. So I started searching out adult cardiology. It was at that time my father had passed away, and I really was kind of soul searching for different approaches, and happened to run into a eventual mentor at Scripps Clinic, who had founded the largest center in integrative medicine, which was at Scripps Clinic. And so she was an interventional cardiologist that brought me in, put me under her wing, and I was lucky enough to match in fellowship at Scripps Clinic, and was one of the first integrative medicine trained cardiology fellows. Graduated, got hired on here at Scripps, and have now taken over as medical director of the Scripps Center for Integrative Medicine. I also participate as the APD of our cardiology fellowship program, and I work closely with Dr. Patel. He's our PD, and we've created an integrative track for our fellows, which has been a big success for the general cardiology program. I am just recently, Scripps Clinic was awarded a very large grant to expand for the underserved cardiology approaches, and especially expand our women's cardiology program. And so I'm the cardiology director for that program as well. So I serve as a general cardiologist. I am full clinical still, doing inpatient, outpatient. I still do diagnostic caths, and was doing TEs up until recently, but just recently gave that up just from not having enough time. But again, thank you for this opportunity.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Next, we'll have Dr. Shama Williams.
Thank you so much for the invitation. My name is Shama Williams. I come from the island of Bermuda. For people who don't know where Bermuda is, if you look on a world map on a globe, look for heaven, and then just come just a little south of heaven, and you'll find the beautiful island of Bermuda. I was born number 6 of 8 boys to my parents in Bermuda. My mother was a registered nurse. My dad was a mason who built houses. I knew since about 5th grade that I wanted to be a physician, and by 11th grade, I knew I wanted to be a cardiologist, and I never wavered from that path. I attended Oakwood University, located in Huntsville, Alabama. It's a historically Black college and university there, majoring in biology and mathematics. After completing that, I went on to Loma Linda University for medical school. And then I did my internal medicine residency at the University of Alabama in Birmingham. After completing residency, I returned to Loma Linda for my cardiology fellowship, which I completed in about 2017. And then I actually came on to Loma Linda as faculty, where I worked for 4 years. Now, while I was working for Loma Linda, while Loma Linda is an academic hospital, I was actually stationed at the county hospital. And so there in the county hospital, you get to do everything related to cardiology. So of course, consults, reading echoes, doing TEEs, doing cardiac CT scans. Also at that time, I was the clinical director for the cardiology clinic at Arrowhead Regional Medical Center, which is the county hospital that I was stationed at. After 4 years of training and 4 years of practice, I decided that I wanted to actually return to fellowship. I've always wanted to do interventional cardiology. And so on July 1st, I started my interventional cardiology fellowship at Loma Linda University.
Excellent, thank you very much. And last but certainly not least, Dr. Vanisha Garc.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Vanisha Garc. I'm originally from Southern California. I did my medical school at New York Medical College, and then similar to Dr. Brenton Bauer, I was actually in his class, but I completed residency, general cardiology fellowship at UCLA, and then I also did my interventional cardiology fellowship at UCLA. I graduated about 2.5 years ago. And then after fellowship, I knew I wanted to go into an academic job, and I just based on family reasons, I was focused on the Inland Empire in Southern California, and was lucky to find Loma Linda. So I work as an interventional cardiologist at Loma Linda. In my job, I do both interventional cardiology and general cardiology. I also worked actually with Dr. Williams over at Arrowhead, the county hospital of Loma Linda, and at the medical center. So similarly do echoes, consults, and obviously angiograms. And then during my training, my UCLA training, I did develop an interest in cardio-oncology. So I started the cardio-oncology program at Loma Linda, and I'm the director of the cardio-onc program here. So it's been a great past couple of years at Loma Linda, and happy to share my experiences. Thank you so much again for having me on the panel.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for introducing yourselves. And like we were saying before, we're going to dive into pre-selected questions. And of course, if you do have any questions, as a reminder, please feel free to put it in the chat box. And then Pani and I can definitely ask all our panelists these questions. So let's start off with the first one. It's for all of our panelists here. It's how did you solidify your interest in your field? And if anyone did additional training, how did that prepare you for your career? So let's first start off with Dr. Ambrosi.
Yeah, so I always knew that I wanted to do cardiology, and I was always interested in research. You know, for me, when I was in medical school, I loved all those acronyms for the big trials, and I thought what separated, you know, cardiology from other fields was that we just had such a great evidence base for, you know, for what we do, and that's even taking into account that there's, you know, only solid evidence for, you know, 1 out of 10 guideline recommendations in cardiology, but compared to other fields, we're light years ahead, and so for me, that was the most attractive thing. As far as additional training, you know, to sort of realize my career goals, I did 2 years of dedicated clinical work and 2 years of dedicated research during fellowship. So I did come out with, you know, both a strong basis in clinical cardiology as well as, you know, research methodology for like large scale big data studies and clinical trials. And it's been great to be able to combine those two interests.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Next, Dr. Bauer.
Yeah, so similarly, I have kind of always decided that I wanted to do cardiology for a long time. The only other subspecialty that even came close was oncology, and I guess hence the cardio-oncology part now. But yeah, so during fellowship, I decided probably during my second year that I wanted to pursue advanced training in you know, cardiac imaging, and so I spent quite a bit of time with you know, Dr. Matt Budoff at Harbor UCLA for training in cardiac CT. Spent additional time doing MRI over at the VA GLA, as well as at UCLA, nuclear, and then echocardiography, including a lot of interventional echo. Have a lot of interest in structural echo for MitraClips, TriClips, you know, Watchmans, things like that. So really kind of utilize the third year of fellowship, which is I would definitely say is a good time to really decide what you're going to do and maximize the use of that third year, whether it's in research-based advanced imaging or whatever you decide to go into, because that's a year that can really be tapped into. And then also did my cardio-oncology work there and have used that in my practice. So yeah, so it's been great, and you know, take any other questions you have.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Dr. Enders, how did you solidify your interest in the field?
Yeah, I think I was probably one of the more undifferentiated. I think coming into internal medicine, my mom's a hospitalist, and I think I kind of thought maybe I'd be a hospitalist. I thought about home critical care as I think, you know, there's just something very alluring, I think, when you're first an intern and just seeing kind of the awe of like the ICU. And we have a great home critical care staff at Scripps Clinic. So I was really leaning that way, but I did my back-to-back rotations on cardiology and outpatient pulmonary my second year of residency early at Scripps, and it was really like doing rotations with Melher and Chris that, you know, I think I remember still things you guys like told to your patients. And I think for me, really that lifestyle impact, I'm a very optimistic person. So I think for me, getting to see patients like do well in the long term, and I think in cardiology, we really can make those take somebody really sick and really make them very healthy again. And so I think that was something that for me looks very different from the outpatient pulmonary clinic. So that's really what I think, drew me to cardiology amongst other things. And I totally agree. I think about the comment about the third year of fellowship. I think looking retrospectively for me, that was, I was a chief fellow at CPMC, and I spent a lot of it doing some administrative work, really helping to expand some of our structural exposure. I think coming out of Scripps, I knew how important that was, that really fellows get that training in their third year, and making sure we really expanded our advanced heart failure rotation and things like that. So I really became very involved administratively, and that's kind of what I've stepped into in the East Bay.
Excellent. Dr. Kandenwa?
Yeah, I think I was a little bit more similar to Carolyn, where, I didn't know for sure that I wanted to do cardiology. I was actually planning to do pulm critical care when I was in internal medicine residency. But I think I took a year in between residency and fellowship to really decide. And I was a nocturnist covering both the MICU, CCU, and SICU. And it was really that seeing those patients actually get better that made a difference in kind of where I ended up following my career path. And I particularly saw a lot of preventable disease in Chicago. And so that kind of solidified that, with cardiology, you can really make a big difference. And then within that same kind of year, I had like 3 different family members die of sudden cardiac death. So that was definitely kind of, this is where I need to go. And so I did that. With regards to additional training, I really took my third year to do additional imaging time as well. And then I actually think that the master's I got before medical school was actually very, very helpful in terms of kind of giving me a basic coding experience, data management experience, and information systems organization experience, which I use to implement our digital health initiative here at Stanford, as well as kind of manage all the clinics. So that's actually been extremely helpful. And I at the time didn't realize it would be, but.
Excellent. Dr. Parwani?
Yeah, so I knew I was going to be a cardiologist since I was very young. I just clicked with the physiology and anatomy. My father is a surgeon, and I just liked the heart from the get-go. And then, in med school, I solidified. But I think coming forward, talking about subspecialty, I still remember in my second and third year, finishing every rotation, and at the end saying to myself, oh my God, I'm going to do this. And then next month, changing my mind and saying that again, oh my God, I'm going to do EP. I never said that about interventional. So not about interventional, but otherwise every other, yeah, Shama, you can laugh, every other subspecialty, I just was so interested in, like even vascular, congenital. So I think at the end, I was just so confused what I want to do. And I decided that, okay, I want to be a good, why don't I just try to be first a good general cardiologist? And a general cardiologist needs the basic understanding of the imaging, including, echo and maybe a bit of nuclear and CT. And, so I just applied for a multimodality imaging fellowship. And, so and then they said that, oh, we are going to also teach you MRI. And I was like, yeah, sure. I learned because I just want to do this, but I want to be a good general cardiologist. And then, it just, then I, in my subspecialty training year at UCSF, I just got really good mentors, and I realized how much I loved imaging. But I think that the point of telling you guys the story is that not every time you know what you want to do, but somehow you figure the path out. You all are gonna, you're cardiologists, so you will figure it out, and it's okay to be confused. Eventually, it all will come together. So during my imaging year, I realized that, I would go to conferences and stuff, and I realized that there was a lot of integration between the women's cardiovascular disease as well as imaging, particularly CT, MRI, calcium score, INOCA, MINOCA, all these new entities were coming up. And in fact, they were just described in 2014 while I was in fellowship. So I started seeking mentorship from all the speakers that I would go and listen to. So, and then through my social media connections later on, which I started developing during my fellowship, I was able to connect with everyone and then kind of focus on that interest. So at Loma Linda, when I started, I started my parallel clinic. So my clinical practice is mostly women, and I treat women with cardiovascular disease. So 1-day clinic is all women in cardiovascular disease, and the rest of the 4 days I do multimodality imaging, including CT, MRI, echo, and nuclear.
Excellent. Dr. Patel? You're muted, Dr. Patel.
Yeah, I figures I would learn how to use Zoom at some point. So when when I was in both medical school and residency, I actually just didn't find a rotation that I didn't like. I sort of loved everything, and one of the things I found in residency is that I had a hard time choosing because I liked every single rotation that I was involved with. One of the things that drew me to cardiology is because I could spend my day doing so many different things. I could spend part of it in the ICU and then on the floor and then doing procedures and seeing outpatients and reading echoes and doing, reading nuclear studies. And it's sort of that variety is what drew me to it. When I talk to fellows about, deciding their career path or deciding between career paths, or even residents, and they're not sure if they want to do cardiology or not, one of the things I ask them to do is take out some of the mental stimulation from your decision, just as a one way to do this exercise. And what I mean by that is, although it's important to be intellectually stimulated by that particular field and topic, you're going to have days where you may have a routine day or something else that's nothing's really intellectually exciting about it, but you still have to find a positive feedback from what you're doing. Part of it isn't the novelty of that new topic. Part of it is, what are you doing day to day, moment to moment? The experience of outpatient clinics and seeing patients on a longitudinal basis, doing a procedure, making a meaningful, direct impact onto a patient's outcome. Where is the personal gratification you get out of it? And that's what I ask them to spend a little time doing if they're uncertain about it, is to sort of live a day in the life of these subspecialists and see, is that something that you get energized from, that you get motivated for? And that's, I think that a lot of your end of your second year and most of your third year should be spent doing that if you're not entirely certain about your future plans.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Patel. Dr. Robinson, same question.
I don't know that I can offer a better description of why to go into cardiology than what's already been said. I would just say that as a resident, I really found myself already kind of thinking about cardiology, but I loved doing point of care ultrasounds. We had our ED, like many EDs, was very invested in that, and they let the internal medicine residents come rotate, and I couldn't get away from that rotation. I loved doing ultrasound guided IVs, and I just felt like to pair in real-time imaging with clinical care patients was so fun, and to see them kind of at the same time I was caring for them was very meaningful, and that maybe guided me more towards maybe the imaging side of cardiology. I'd just say broadly also, not just in medicine, but in life, people tend to be happier when they have areas within what they do that they feel ownership of. And so no matter where you are in cardiology, or even where you are within cardiology, as an interventionalist or as a structural interventionalist, you'll still find yourself gravitate towards certain areas that you feel like you own and follow and track over time. I think that's important. It's an important thing to keep in mind. And the other thing that I found, a good piece of advice, I went to an ACC, I can't remember what it was something at the Hart House in DC. And Fooster's point was talking about careers in research. And he said, don't focus so much on the tools, focus on the entities. So, if you're passionate about diagnosis X or a certain population, focus on that and the tools will come to you, because our tools come and go through cardiology. So even at this kind of juncture in my career, I've already seen that. And I think the patients will take us to kind of where we need to be. It's a little bit far afield from what you're asking, but anything else, Megan, that you wanted me to address? Okay.
That was an excellent answer. Dr. Suhar, what about you? How did you solidify your interest in integrative cardiology or cardiology in general?
Yeah, I kind of talked a little bit about it in my intro. What I would say, I don't have much else to add, but I will say that probably the biggest influence throughout my journey on the decisions of going into cardiology and eventually ended up in my current practice was basically mentors. That was just really finding somebody that has the excitement that I can end up sharing, and I was lucky enough to find people that were passionate in certain areas, and like why I wanted to do pediatric cardiologist. This Dr. Sanchez at MCO where I was at just had this massive passion for it, and that resonated so well with me. It got me into med peds because I wanted to have that aspect. So integrative medicine. I met this mentor at Scripps Clinic, and so that has been a huge impact in my career choices. And I think most fellows are at every program across the country. Most programs have people that are interested and engaged in teaching and finding and seeking out somebody that can share some mutual interest and guide you on their successes. That goes probably the best. That'll probably do the best.
Excellent, thank you. Dr. Williams, what about you?
As I stated in my introduction, I knew very early that cardiology was something that I wanted to do after having the opportunity to actually shadow a cardiologist in high school. And so I cannot overstate the importance of trying to get in and see what cardiologists or what interventionalists or what imagers are actually doing, so that you can get a taste of what it's like to be inside of their shoes. One of the things that I like about cardiology specifically is the fact that I get to develop relationships with my patients, and I can have longevity with them. I can do counseling, or in my particular case, I can put in a stent and have instant gratification from seeing an artery be opened. So those are some of the things that kind of help me go every day.
Excellent. And Dr. Garg?
Yeah, I mean, I think similar to what other people have said, I don't know that I was necessarily interested in cardiology right when I first started residency, but eventually was drawn to cardiology just with the rotations and the fact that I think cardiology offers so many opportunities to just all the different subspecialties that there are. You get critical care, outpatient care, and opportunities for procedures. So I think ultimately that's what led me into cardiology. And then during cardiology fellowship, so I went down the interventional route. I was not planning on going down the interventional route. I mean, I liked being in the cath lab originally, but it was not something that I wanted to necessarily commit to forever, especially because of the lifestyle that's attached to being an interventional cardiologist. And then it was sometime during the second year of fellowship that I had a couple of great teachers and mentors, and just even my co-fellows, seeing and working with some of the fellows graduate, people who have done it before me, who completed fellowship, got jobs, and were happy with some of the decisions that they made. That made me kind of realize that during fellowship, what we think is a particular field may or may not be. Like, there's a lot of different other job opportunities that are out there. And so you just have to realize what it is that you want and what you want out of your job and try to seek those opportunities out. And then in terms of the cardio oncology part of what I do, I mean, I was fortunate to have a really great mentor in cardiology training, and was able to participate in a cardio oncology clinic during my third year of fellowship. So really build that interest. And just to kind of echo what the other panelists are saying, I mean, I think having mentors is very, very, very important. Somebody to look up to and kind of aspire to be, and figure out exactly what you want to do. And I think using that third year of fellowship is a good time to build your interests and figure out what type of practice you want to have in the future.
Wonderful. Thank you guys so much. We'll go ahead and move to our next question, which is, how did you all choose your current practice setting, whether it's an academic, private, or managed care setting? If any of you have had experience within multiple various settings, then please share your experience comparing them, and ultimately have us share how you ended up deciding on the current career path that you're on. So we'll go ahead and get started with Dr. Ambrosi.
We're going to have to change it up and go reverse alphabetical for some of these, so I can hear what all these esteemed colleagues have to say. as I mentioned in my first question, I looked kind of broadly at different practice settings, and very early on, I did sort of have Kaiser Permanente, in my sights. I really wanted to be at a place where, there was a focus on quality and excellent patient care, but there was also opportunities to do, really high level research, whether it be population health or delivery science or clinical trials. So, I actually had reached out to all the Kaiser Permanente regions. So each Kaiser Permanente region has a regional research office, and I had reached out to all their heads, and I was like, I'm a cardiologist, but I'm also a clinician investigator. Is there a possibility to sort of to pursue a hybrid career path? And I got a positive response from Northern California. They had been looking for somebody to do, my group that I work with had been looking for somebody to come on and mentor the fellows in research. And our regional division of research had been looking for a cardiologist to lead their population health and clinical trial efforts. So it just kind of came together very quickly, and I've been very happy.
Wonderful, thank you. Next, Dr. Bauer.
Yeah, so I actually, I didn't realize that I'd be out of academics. I thought for a while that I was going to stay in academics. I looked at jobs at UCLA, at the VA in Long Beach, at the county hospital, through LA County, up at all of you, as well as the current role at the private practice down in the South Bay. And I think several factors led me to choose private practice and kind of focus more on the community setting. I would say is number one, I wanted to kind of take the cardio-oncology to a location that wasn't otherwise being serviced, and to create a service line within our larger cardiovascular service line outside of an academic setting, and use the training I had in fellowship to bring it more to the community. So I thought that was a very important part of the decision making, as well as to, not just for cardio-oncology, shall I say, but for the advanced imaging. That's something also I wanted to help bring to the South Bay. And then honestly, I may not be a popular answer, but timing is very important. Timing is critically important when it comes to jobs, especially coming, realistically also in the pandemic setting. A lot of practices suffered quite a bit, pay cuts and things like that. And so, practices are kind of just coming out of that. And not to say that you should make decisions based upon that, but reality is reality. So, being sure that kind of what you're looking for, and trying to train as best you can to be able to offer a lot of services that you can provide that different practices may need. I think is very nice to basically put yourself in a good position to have options and a lot of doors completely wide open, because in my opinion, it'd be better to keep all doors open and then you shut the doors that you decide to shut, as opposed to have all the doors shut for you. So basically, that's kind of what led to me choosing. It was allowing me to choose that I wanted to go into private practice, and then ultimately, declining the other positions, obviously very graciously, but choosing to go into private practice for that. But that's my only kind of comment, is so that you can make sure that you keep all doors open to you.
Fantastic, thank you. Next, Dr. Enders.
Yeah, so I think, I guess similarly, I knew kind of I wanted to stay in the Bay Area, ideally, and California if possible, when I was, starting my job search. And I knew, I would say from pretty early on in fellowship, that I was very interested in Kaiser Permanente. I think for me, there was some CPMC kind of has somewhat of a private practice model. And for me, I found that was not a model I really thrived in. I kind of didn't want to have to worry about like which study needed to be assigned to who to get what RVUs. And I found that was something, a part of medicine I didn't love, and that I really liked kind of just working with the larger group. And so certainly at Kaiser, we're really all in one team. It's a group practice. Our patients are all shared in ours together. So I think it was something that I knew pretty early on that's what I was interested in. And So I had just done lots of networking, I think, throughout my my fellowship to really get to know a lot of people within the Kaiser system. I did interview it at other places, and I did interview at other Kaisers other than the location I ended up at. So I actually had interviewed at Santa Clara, San Francisco, the Walnut Creek one, as well as East Bay, where I ended up, and then also had interviewed. And so I'd say, as far as job offers that I had one that was at a very private practice, Beverly Hills, which was not the right fit for me, and then also was choosing between Santa Clara and the East Bay. And I think this is one of those things where, you know, my program director really wanted me to pick Santa Clara, which was more of a flagship site to be at. I think for me, it was about really picking, you know, the group of partners that I really felt the most comfortable with. So I think for me, I've been really happy with my decision. You know, I think for me, I feel really supported in my group. I feel really fortunate to already be, you know, in an assistant chief position. So I think, you know, I think some of the misconceptions sometimes about Kaiser is that it's this big system that you can't change anything. And I think like really the opposite is so true, that each department is really different. And there's really so much work that can be done to make each department very individualized. And so, you know, if you're thinking about Kaiser, you know, even just certainly reaching out to either Drew or me, that they're all really different. So even within Northern California itself, so and different in good ways, you know, but I think that was just something that I discovered along my journey.
Fantastic, thank you. Next, we'll have Dr. Candela.
So, you know, I trained at a private hospital system, and we rotated over at the county system and the VA. So I had kind of an idea of what each of those entailed. And then I grew up in a family of physicians in private practice by the Cleveland Clinic. So I also had an idea of what that system looked like. So when I was looking for jobs, you know, I cast my net broadly. I wanted to both look at private as well as academic centers, just to see what was the right fit. My husband is not in medicine, he's in tech. And so there were some job opportunities out in the West Coast that really kind of lended us to be in this area. And then with Women's Heart Health, you know, it kind of seemed like a natural fit to help grow this program. So I ended up coming out here, which was a big shift for me. I think that, you know, looking back, I definitely think that what I tell some of my fellows is that as a fellow, when someone tells you, you know, or asks you, what do you want to do? It's always, I want to do academic medicine, because that's all you've ever seen. And so I think it's really important when you're making that decision to really make sure you get a good sample of all your options. And I think that sometimes people think the work-life balance is a little bit better in academic medicine. And I would argue that it really just depends on the environment in which you're practicing. So really getting a sense of what your goals are, and not short-term, but longer-term goals, and making sure that where you are fits strategically with that is really important.
Great, thank you so much. Next, Dr. Parwani.
Yes, I think I really resonated with what Dr. Kandenwa said. I think it's very good to have those list of priorities. What exactly, you know, matters to you the most? Is it the location? Is it the, you know, the work-life balance? Is it what the, you know, practice is going to be? Do you want to just do what your subspecialty offers, or are you, you know, willing to do general cardiology in addition to your subspecialty? Do you want academic medicine or private practice? And, you know, along with what she said, I see this often in fellows, you know, I want to do private academic medicine, but they don't know the reason why they want to be in academic medicine. And I would say that private practice has its own advantages. So, you know, don't be blinded in that, you know, when you are in fellowship. More importantly, I think for me, I knew that teaching was a big part of my life, and I did not want to give it up. I really enjoyed teaching, and you know, I'm really passionate about educating the trainees. So I always wanted to be in academic medicine for that matter. And I think when it comes to academic medicine, you again have to ask this question. There was a Twitter poll a couple of years ago, I remember. Do you want to be the big fish in a small pond, or do you want to be a small fish in a big pond? So I think that, again, what your research goals are, what your practice goals are, you decide, which university or which practice you're going to choose. Now, for me, I can tell you that all this was out of the window because I'm a foreign medical graduate. I don't get many options. And then I put myself in the restrictions of being in California, which is very hard for any foreign medical graduate. So I think that what I did when I was at UCSF, as I told my mentors, UCSF at that time was not able to offer the visa that I required. So I asked my mentors to call around for me, and I really aggressively reached out to all the VA chiefs because VA used to offer the visa that I needed. And then, of course, all the academic centers in case, I get lucky. And then I was going to broaden my search if that did not work. And I almost got, 12 interviews, which I was very lucky. I thought it was amazing, except that no one wanted to offer me visa that I needed. So I think that, Loma Linda, they had a very rudimentary MRI practice, which my focus in multimodality imaging was cardiac MRI. At that time, cardiology was offering very little MRI. So I think it kind of worked out because they said that, that was the area I could develop. And then once I started here, I kind of figured out what were the gaps in the practice that they were offering and, where I could expand. And of course, with my interest into women's health, that was something that was not developed, and it kind of integrated with my imaging practice. So I ended up here, and I think that we have great work-life balance, but I would say that probably, I don't know, maybe I'm biased, but I think West Coast in general is better with work-life balance than East Coast, hearing from other friends from East Coast. So that's, I again, just prioritize all those factors and decide, what matters the most for you.
Great, thank you so much. Next, we'll have Dr. Patel.
Yeah, so even though I'm a doctor, which means I like to hear myself talk, I don't think I have a meaningful contribution above the really sort of insightful comments that you guys have already made so far. You took all the advice I was already going to give. This is really good stuff.
Thank you. Next, Dr. Robinson.
Hey, yeah. So I think first, you don't know what you don't know, right? That's what Donald Rumsfeld. And so it's tough to even know alternate practice situations. And I won't pretend to know every possible practice iteration. I think a few things that are important, you kind of weigh what you think is, what you value most. I kind of was looking mostly for academic jobs, research heavy 80-20 academic jobs, applying for jobs. I had a K written and some internal grants. And I realized, the number of places that have BME and cardiology NIH funded cardiac MRI research, where cardiology is also allowed to read cardiac MRIs, is like less than 6 in the country. So, so you've kind of evaluate your priorities and what you want and kind of what you think is going to be meaningful to you. And I think, all of us realize, like, how much did I really understand what internal medicine residency was going to be like as a medical student, or how much did I really know what cardiology fellowship was going to be like when I was an internal medicine resident. And it's also, I don't know that we all have a perfect idea of what life will be like as as we start our career at any juncture, at any location, even if it's at the same institution where we were. So it's also, I've found it's also healthy to have a fair degree of open-mindedness and kind of just find some enjoyment in the unknowns of kind of jumping into a new career, point in your career at a new location potentially. So it's been, and I think that's, and like Dr. Patel, I don't know that I have more to add beyond that.
Wonderful, thank you. Dr. Suhar?
Yeah, I don't have a ton more to add other, I think that comment that Dr. Robinson just made about being open-minded is key. I wanted a practice that allowed me to teach, do research, but also be a clinical cardiologist and still perform procedures and stuff. So That's why I sought out, and fortunately my cardiology group here at Scripps Clinic had all that and encouraged it. So, but I don't have much more to add.
Wonderful, thank you. Dr. Williams.
So like Parvi, coming from an international country, I was also on a visa. And so my options were limited. Coming down to the end of my cardiology fellowship, I did not apply for interventional cardiology because I did not want to risk possibly having to leave the country without a visa. And so as part of my negotiations, when I went into my contract negotiation, I put it on the table as a top priority that the people who hire me would help me by sponsoring a green card. And they gracefully did that. And so I've been very, very happy working at Loma Linda. And not only that, I kind of did something that I didn't think I would do in terms of academic medicine. I, like Parvi, also like to teach. But I don't necessarily love the teaching aspect of it. I had the opportunity to work as a block director for first and second year medical students for their cardiology education. And this is something that I have actually loved doing. And so I think in life, you're gonna find some things that you kind of have to do, put your all into it, and you might just figure out that you like it.
Wonderful, thank you. And Dr. Garg.
Yeah, I don't know that I have that much more to add. I mean, I think for me personally, I was leaning more towards academic jobs to begin with. That being said, though, I did meet with private groups in the area, but just ultimately realized that that wasn't really a good fit for me. I think my only advice, just to echo what other people are saying, is just, I think, be open-minded. And if you're not sure when you're looking for jobs, just interview with a lot of different jobs to see what fits, and use your mentors and contacts to try to see what job opportunities there are, because a lot of jobs are not actually posted online.
Excellent. Thank you all so much for answering that question. This next question is open to the floor, and this is before we open it up to the audience questions that we've been collecting. So the question is for anyone who wants to answer. If you could do it again, what would you do differently, and to add, or how would you add to your experience to augment your career? And how would you navigate things differently? Anyone do anything differently? No?
We are all optimistic here. So you can see that, these are some optimistic cardiologists, and we exactly knew what we wanted to know. I think everyone probably, I think there is a bit of, I think you figure out eventually. So I don't know, that's what I would say, that I don't know if I would have done anything differently given my situation, the timing. Timing is the key, as I think someone said, Brenton, I think you said, timing is the key. So I think given everything that I was offered, I think I did well for myself.
Sounds good.
I don't know if this is what I would have done differently, but I was struck by what Dr. Kandenwa said about connecting her master's work with her later clinical work and clinical and academic work. And I would just say that that's a lot of fun. And so any way that you can fuse disparate ends of your life and your experience that you've had is always enjoyable. I think that's helpful to keep in mind.
Excellent, thank you. Anyone else to add to that question? All right, Connie.
Okay, so we'll move on to our next question. So as you all know, cardiology is an extremely fulfilling yet demanding career. So we would love to hear your advice on how you maintain a work-life balance and prioritizing wellness throughout your career. So we'll just start in alphabetical order again, Drew.
I think that, one of the things that I always recommend to people to maintain professional and personal balance is, to really have some diversity in your professional experience. And I think that if you're 100% clinical and you're stuck in clinic, 5 days a week, that people often get quite burnt out. So, in order to stay fresh and to stay energized in medicine, I really think you need patient care plus something else, whether that's research, education, administration, outreach. adding a little bit of diversity will, really help you stay fresh and focused. So for me, like, after I've been looking at the same grant for 4 or 5 days in a row, it's really nice to go around and do all clinical work. And I feel like bouncing back and forth between different things, keeps me from getting burnt out or discouraged on other things.
Wonderful advice. Thank you. Dr. Bauer?
Yeah, so I would say is, maintaining work-life balance is definitely challenging, but definitely a very important thing to do. Echoing what Andrea had mentioned as far as getting kind of a different perspective and doing something a little bit different, I think is really important. That's kind of why I did a lot with the ACC or California ACC and other societies, early on, was to maintain a connection to kind of the professional societies and academics, especially since I left and went to private practice. So it fulfilled that aspect, as well as allowed for additional avenue or areas to basically focus time and energy to maintain some balance there, which was great. Also, kind of building a clinical program outside of the actual day-to-day patient care, I think, is, even though it's clinical in nature, that's kind of the administrator role that Drew was mentioning, which is very beneficial and something that really I think is both challenging as well as rewarding from the standpoint of it's creating, a new service line within your private practice or within the institution that you're working at, and benefiting the local community as a whole. The other thing that I did was have a kid during COVID, so that forces you into some work-life balance, because you pushes you to to figure it out so that you can be a good parent and everything like that. So just kind of prioritizing things, I think, is the biggest thing, and taking a step back in that 30,000 foot view and figuring out what's important to you. And I will say what was important to me in fellowship and very, very early career has definitely changed with some, personal changes like that. So just be open to those changes and work with them, because I feel like things are very much more dynamic than I thought they were going to be.
Fantastic. Thank you. Dr. Enders?
Yeah, I have a 22-month-old daughter. So for me, I'm going to say this slightly different from, I totally agree with what Drew said and Brenton too. But I think for me, it's sometimes knowing when to say no. I think you guys are all really talented people, and you're going to get asked to do a lot of things. And so I think for me, it's sometimes actually knowing which things to prioritize, and what I can say yes to, and when I need to say my plate is kind of full right now. So I think for me, that's to allow some work-life balance with I think being especially a female in medicine and in cardiology. I think it's something that it is a real challenge. I think like learning how to breastfeed, coming back to work. I was actually so thankful, that with the pandemic, and then I actually got to work from home some of the days. So I think that actually helped me do it longer than I would have otherwise. So I think that's, so I think fortunately, I think the field is moving into a place where there are more females in cardiology. I think that work-life balance, I think it's for everybody, but I think especially sometimes being a new mother, kind of coming back into it, I've really had to learn, what I can say yes to and what I might need to say no to.
Fantastic. Thank you. Dr. Kandenwa?
Yeah, so this might be a little inflammatory, but I tell my fellows there's no such thing as a work-life balance. It's kind of like a seesaw. There are times in your life that you're going to be in the ICU or inpatient talking to a family for whatever reason, and you're going to miss your child's dance recital. It happens. And then there's other times that I'm going to not answer that phone call and sit there and listen to my child read a book. And I think it's really, really hard, because you leave fellowship at a pace that is not a sustainable pace for a actual career. So I keep telling my newer junior faculty, slow down. Like, you don't have to work at the pace of a fellow. Just enjoy and kind of have your plans and work at an appropriate and sustainable pace. And I mean, I do my best. I'm maybe not the best at it, but I try my best to emulate those standards as well. I try to teach the fellows that self-care is very, very important, because when you see your mentors around you working day and night, it makes it very hard to set those standards for yourself. I think I can completely empathize with Carolyn. I had 2 children as a junior attending here in a program that didn't have too many women and definitely didn't have any nursing facilities. So many of my male colleagues got to know me very intimately in clinic while I was pumping. And so I made it work, and I just made sure that as I was recruiting more faculty, I made sure that there were resources available for them. And I think that wherever you all do go to work, just make sure to have that voice and make sure that it's set as a priority, that you're not there just, the job is a portion of who you are, but it has to be the right family, I guess is the way to say it. So if you enter the right family, you're going to have a good network that will support you during the seesaw. So I think COVID made a lot of us here in California realize, especially for those of us whose family's not nearby, how important that work family and that social network was. So I think having that in place is also extremely important. I have 2 nannies and a backup nanny. I mean, you've got to have this village ready to take on your personal life. My spouse knows that there are times like today that he's going to have to do dinner and bedtime, and it's okay. But it's just having that system in place is extremely important, especially I would say as a female cardiologist.
Thank you. Very well said. Next, Dr. Parwani.
Yeah, so I think to me, self-care is about self-compassion, right? And I think what in cardiology sometimes we forget in this rat race is that, you know, we compare, we see what others are doing, and we forget what we have done. And I think to me that pat in the back sometimes, time by time, is very, very important. Make yourself realize what you have achieved, where you have come. So, you know, unlike Abha and Carolyn, you know, I'm in a different phase of my life where I'm a yes, you know, right now I'm in my yes phase. So I don't have children, I'm not married, and I have lots of time to me, you know, to make sure that, you know, what Brenton was saying, that getting involved with societal positions and, you know, being very involved with the service life development, that's very important, because as someone said, you know, doing the same work, you know, day in and day out in fellowship, it may be exciting, but then after a while it gets boring. And, you know, burnout is also, you need to enjoy what you're doing, because 70% of the time you're going to be spending at your work. So I think all that is important. But I, you know, as Abha was saying, having that system in place, you know, be it when you have kids, for that, for me, I have a, you know, I have a system. I work out, you know, 3 times a week with a trainer, and other 3 days I do it by myself. I hike on the weekends. I have a rule, regardless of however busy I am, I don't touch work during the weekends. So it's mostly, you know, after work that I have to catch up, I catch up, and everyone knows I maybe will answer emails on Sunday night. So I think having that system for yourself and figuring that out, working on your hobbies, whatever it may be outside medicine, it's very, very important. And I think that as the phase changes, I know in the next phase of my life, I may be what right now Carolyn and Abha are saying. So I think that's very important, to allow yourselves to adapt to that change. You know, I think I always would remember Dr. Rebecca Hahn during an ACC imaging meeting. She told me, I mean, she's a, you know, legend, as you all know, in structural cardiology and structural imaging. And she told me during the 10 years when she was, you know, raising her 3 kids, she did not go to a single conference, didn't give a single talk. And I think that just talks, you know, in spite of that of a gap, you know, she is who she is today. So I think it's important to allow yourself and be self-compassionate to yourself, and not compare yourself to, you know, others, and just, you know, do whatever others are doing.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. And next, Dr. Patel.
Yeah, so I mean, some of the stuff that a lot of people took a little bit of what I was going to say already. I mean, the comments on having diversity in your occupation. In other words, being able to have different aspects to draw energy from. Talking about saying no, the seesaw balance that you kind of as ebb and flow. Open communication with your partner and your kids about sort of what, you know, when I'm on a ward week, I'm really not going to be around physically, and sometimes not even mentally. But I also want to tell you guys that have a little optimism. Although I'm a cardiologist, work RVU based, I had my kids one dream fellowship and one in my first year out. I haven't missed birthdays. I coach basketball. I coach soccer. I was the Cub Scout den leader and troop leader, and working with them on their homework. And I made it a priority to myself and a commitment to my family to, although I'm not going to be there for certain things because the job just requires it. There are other aspects of it that I'm going to work very hard to make sure I'm there with them, and I wouldn't make those trades for anything else. It's an issue of priorities in life, and taking an active role in crafting your career to make all your goals happen. It's not an easy thing, and I have fell into the seesaw. For me, the seesaw is correcting my mistakes. It's leaning one way and then saying, it's not really working out so much, and then working on it to move another way. And it's something that is a work in progress. It's something that I'm still working on. And it's something that, as long as it results in greater happiness for myself, I'm really excited to keep pushing for it. I'm really interested in hearing Dr. Suhar's answer to this. He has like 4 kids. How many kids do you have now? 4. All right. Thank you.
Fantastic. I think you're up next, Dr. Suhar.
Yeah, we actually, during our COVID baby was a new dog, and we're clueless on how to raise a dog. So it was easier raising kids. But I think, Dr. Ambrosi, I think we got to flip the order here, because by the time it gets to me, a lot of the good comments are already taken. But what I will say, I've thought a lot about this and struggled. I think we've all chosen a profession where that work-life balance is often shifted towards the work and less from the life. It's what we've chosen. One of the things I struggle with is whenever anybody talks about burnout or wellness, the onus is put on us as individual physicians. And I get very frustrated about that. It's all about you going and learning how to meditate or being more resilient. And as the director of an integrative center, I believe passionately in meditation. But I think that really this area really comes down to the true way to find wellness or really prevent burnout is having a supportive system and supportive partners that allow you the time to find that meaning in your work, allow you that time to go away from your work and spend time with your family. If you don't have supportive partners or a supportive system, that's going to be very difficult. So when you're looking for jobs, interview the members of the group, ask to do that. And ask those questions about that work-life balance. Inquire about the call, inquire how the finances are set up. Are you work RVU based? Are you salary based? That kind of thing. One of my biggest, stresses in my career has been the administrative work, because I love being a cardiologist, and that administrative work, while I feel like I'm good at it and I have a great partnership with my partner, Dr. Patel, and we do a lot of this together, and it's been a lot of fun. It pulls me away from what I love doing as far as being a cardiologist. And so, think about those choices as you find that meaning in your work and what you love. As far as your own self, that onus on yourself and what you can do, the most powerful thing is saying no. Because again, we all sign up to do yes in this field of cardiology. So no is the most powerful thing you can do.
Wonderful. Thank you. Dr. Robinson?
So just a couple of quick thoughts. One is, so when I started, like almost no orientation. And one day I was in the hall, or Dr. Suhar walks by in the hall and he said, "Hey, come here, look at this really fast." He brought me into his office and he taught me something about just dictating notes that, no joke, has saved me countless hours and contributed to my work-life balance. So I think one is just learning from the people around you. And the other is just that it's not a zero-sum game. It's not like, well, if you're here, then I can go home. I found that like the same principle of, hey, get out of here, really helps. Like if you help your partners and colleagues have a good work-life balance, the same will come back to you. That you'll have helps foster a culture of caring for each other.
Fantastic. Thank you. Dr. Williams?
So I'm going to be very honest here. Work-life balance was very challenging for me as an early career cardiologist. I tended to be someone who was obsessive about the way I would review a chart and the approach that I would take to managing my patients. And learning how to not be so obsessive was part of my struggle. And so part of the struggle for work-life balance for me was me, just learning how to say, I've done a good job and this is what it is. I'm being able to move on from that particular point. The other thing as it pertains to work-life balance is I had to ask myself, if I wasn't doing cardiology, what is it I love that I would be doing? And for me, that's music. And so I've always tried to incorporate music in what I do. So frequently as I'm doing my notes, I might turn the music on, or I might be humming or singing inside of the room while I'm doing my work. Outside of the hospital, though, I continue to pursue my passion in music. And one of the things that the pandemic has given me the opportunity to do is to reconnect with that particular passion. I've started doing voice lessons on a weekly basis, working on getting a Christmas album ready for next year, 2022. So just recognizing that, hey, while you have to work, it's also okay for you to do what you need to do to survive. And you give your patients the best when you yourself are taking the best care of yourself.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And Dr. Garg.
Yes, one of the benefits of me going last is that everybody else has said everything much better than I would have. But I will just say this, I totally agree with what both Purvi and Shama emphasized. I think finding your hobbies is extremely important, whether it's spending time with your family or music or whatever it is. And I think finding a job that allows you to incorporate them into your life, that's what helps keep your sanity.
Excellent. Well, thank you all so much. We have a couple more questions. And this next one sounds like it's open to the floor, so feel free to pitch in whatever you guys want. So this person is wondering if you could comment on the need to get a level 3 in echo, and does the requirement vary based on private versus academic practice? So a little bit of a different spin on things. You might want to take this.
I can jump in. That would be a good question. To be honest with you, I was a little bit, I wouldn't say disheartened. I wasn't expecting that once you did your echo boards, there wasn't really a place to indicate that you had level 3 training, other than getting a letter from your echo lab director and everything, from the fellowship. But there wasn't necessarily a particular, shall we say, additional certification. I believe the MBE and ASC is considering whether they are going to be adding a separate certificate for this. But as of now, level 2 and 3 from a peer certification looks about equivalent. I'll tell you from a private practice standpoint, in like community hospitals, they have zero clue what's level 2 and level 3. I would say more importantly, or most importantly, it's what do you feel comfortable in reading as far as patient care? Do you feel comfortable in your own skill set? Because I would advise you not to over kind of commit what you're able to do or say that you can do and then cannot perform to that level. So I would say beyond what the certifications say, if you have 1,000 echoes, under your belt and it's level 3 or whatever the current guidelines are for it, it really is to be sure that you are comfortable to say that you're truly level 3 and can run that echo lab. I think, I'm not in academics, but I'd say it probably is more important for the academic labs to say you're an echo lab director, but in a private practice model, I would say getting that extra expertise is important, but the certification itself is not.
I would just add one. Go ahead, Austin.
Purvi, go for it, please.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say that this has happened to someone in surgery that I know of, but suddenly one of the surgical specialties decided that, for even for like a private practice model, they needed some sort of certification. So, although it has not happened for all these years, but if you have aspirations to be an Ecolab director, even in a small community private practice, and tomorrow, if the future changes where the, a certification is required, I think during your fellowship is probably the easiest to get the certificate. So, I tell my fellows that, it's by taking the exam, you definitely are going to study, which is going to help you, right? Solidify your, the practical side. So it's good to, take the exam and have those numbers ready in case you have to use it in future.
Excellent, Dr. Robinson. Okay. No, go ahead.
I was just going to briefly say, I know that at Stanford and at several of the academic centers, to get imaging time, you have to either be like a proper imager with CT, MRI, and a subspecialty fellowship, or you have to be at least level 3 in echo.
Yeah, I was going to say the same. One of my friends interviewing a position, an academic position here in California, I don't think represented here the same kind of experience. So, just the the other conversation I've had is with the Echo Lab director at USC, Ben Lin, echoing or kind of reinforcing what Dr. Bauer is saying is, if you're gonna claim level 3 echo, you really have to own it, and aside from checking the boxes, but really be.
Excellent. Thank you all so much. So the next question has to do with doing a diagnostic caths as general cardiologist. So for those of you who are still doing diagnostic caths as general cardiologist, was this something you were actively seeking? If so, what was your experience in identifying jobs that let you do this? And did you do anything in particular during general fellowship to feel more prepared for doing procedures independently as an attending? I know that Dr. Suhar and Dr. Patel have that experience, as well as Dr. Bauer has also experienced that too, but feel free to jump in.
Yeah, I could talk a little bit about that. So I was looking for a job that specifically allowed me to do my own diagnostic caths. What I found when I see fellows going off into practice, I see a few different types of opportunities. Sometimes they're told that if you want to do diagnostic caths, you can. The systems aren't always set up for those individuals. So, for example, the general cardiologist, I asked the fellows, they should see if they have block time. Do they make it easy for you to have access to it? Otherwise, you're gonna have to cancel clinics, or you're gonna have to show up after work is completed to do your diagnostic caths. And ultimately, the interventionalists will say, hey, don't worry about it. I'll take care of that diagnostic cath for you. So the system is not in place for that. At our facility, for example, we have block time for the general cardiologist to add on their cases at 7:30 in the morning before the clinic starts. And so it's set up in a way that encourages general cardiologists to be able to do their own diagnostic caths. What I've seen fellows go out into practice is it's really practice dependent and based a little bit on legacy on how people have set up their divisions. Some make it almost a standard. I've seen fellows go off into practices where everyone's expected to do their diagnostic caths, and the system is set up to support that. In other places, it's just very challenging. There's so many different unique aspects to it but there are places, if you're looking for them, there are places that would be very supportive of that. But it won't be a given.
Yeah, I'll add in if that's okay. The only thing, I just want to reiterate what Dr. Bauer had mentioned in the chat is really your last year fellowship is just trying to suck up as many cases as you can. I think that you get kind of rusty. In our fellowship, we do most of our cath months in their second year. So in the third year, the ones that want to continue to keep their skills after they look for a job at that, I think as soon as you get out of fellowship, also you got nobody behind you that's giving you advice or whatever. So trying to act more like an attending when you're a third year and make decisions, I think goes a long way. You can ask whoever your mentor is to allow you to kind of take more of a leadership role. The other thing was a humbling experience that I had was learning radial when I was an attending. I was actually learning from a lot of the fellows. We rarely get access time because the fellows come in and get access. So that was a humbling experience because all my training was done on femoral access. And then here we are in learning radio, a number of years ago. So just be prepared, to, sometimes you have to pivot and learn new things. That's part of what we do. So.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. I think that actually brings us to a close. So it's been a pleasure spending the last hour and a half with you all. Again, we'd like to thank our wonderful panelists for their time, their amazing advice, and valuable pearls. We'd also like to thank the California ACC Executive Committee for their opportunity to provide fellows and residents with this tremendous resource. And lastly, we'd like to thank all of our guests for joining our session tonight. So again, just a reminder that this session is recorded and will be available for your viewing on the ACC Fit website. And please make sure to join us tomorrow for our next great session on interventional cardiology and electrophysiology. So we look forward to seeing you then. And Megan and I hope you have a great night.
Thank you, everybody.